Namaste. My name is Ashish Pandey. I teach in the School of Management in IIT Bombay. First of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to Vivekananda Kendra and Vivekananda Prabodhini in Mumbai, Sri Narendra Joshi ji, with whom I am interacting in connection to this talk. And I am familiar to the work of Vivekananda Prabodhini and work of Narendra Joshi ji. They are doing great service to the culture of this country, culture of Bharatvarsh. And we know that this culture is uh, is committed for the well-being of all. So in that way, their commitment is not only to the country, but commitment to the world, to the humanity. So I extend my gratitude and respect to these great organizations and the people involved in this organization. In this talk, I'm going to discuss, we will look at how spirituality is entering and not only entering in the practice but also in the field of theory and in the field of pedagogical initiatives uh, in management. So in this session we will look at how spirituality related research is heading and actually making the pathway in the field of management academics, management practice, and management education. The entry of spirituality at workplace related concepts and theories started and happened in multiple routes, through multiple routes. First is the root of religion. Many religion in the world talk about spiritual aspect of work or sacredness involved at work. And the notion of vocation is there in Christianity. Karma Yoga is there in the Sanatan Dharma and our Sanatan culture. Uh, and this was the first entry point of spirituality to enter the spirituality literature and spirituality, the management literature and management academics. Second point came up through the research in mindfulness. Mindfulness research first started in systematic research. I'm talking about systematic research, which is started by the group of physicians, and Kabat-Zinn and his group did the initial path-breaking work in the hospital, and they looked at the role of mindfulness practices on some physical health. They primarily studied subjects which were having different kind of suffering. I think the initial study was the patient suffering from cancer. Uh, and then the mindfulness entered into the field of well-being, psychology, and through there, naturally, it had to enter the field of management. So that's the second entry point. So religion is the first entry point of spirituality related concepts entering into the management. Mindfulness has been the second point of entry in the field of management. And yoga is the most, you can say, the most recent entry point opened up to discuss spirituality, to bring the spiritual insights in the field of management. So what I'm going to talk about, how yoga has entered and influencing the management academics, management practice, and management teaching or management education. Before we discuss these points, uh, we need to take into account some of the initial thoughts and some of few updates. Spirituality, management, and religion, or it should be stated in the different order. That's because the accepted acronym is MSR. So management, spirituality, and religion is not is a well recognized group. It has its own academic presentations, symposium, paper presentation sessions, panel discussion in the Academy of Management meetings. So Academy of Management meeting is the highest body about management academics, and that's where MSR group is now very well accepted. It started in 1997 as a small interest group. Now it is a big, almost like a division in the Academy of Management body. By the way, Academy of Management, at least I am observing since last 4 or 5 years, they have yoga vinyas or yoga session every day. So 5 days there are some parallel sessions every day on yoga and yoga related practices. If you look at the contemporary management literature, it talks about new forms of industrial revolution. It is talking about business organization being recognized as part of the social system. It is recognized that knowledge creation and knowledge creation which is in the interest of which promotes the well-being for all is the cornerstone of the competitive advantages of business corporations, is now recognized as an important strategic perspective. And while talking about these things, naturally, there are references of the Eastern traditions, whether from the Buddhism, from Bhagavad Gita, from Taoism. So we see a lot of spiritual traditions influencing the management thinking and management practice. I will be sharing about what my team has done in last few years in this field. This journey started for me in 2004 with my admission to the PhD program at MDI Gurgaon, thanks to my guide, Professor Rajan Gupta, uh, whose guidance, and Professor Jyotsna Bhatnagar, whose inspiration led me to explore the ideas of spirituality at workplace. And that was the time when there was not much academic literature available. The spirituality at workplace was not well defined constructs. There were very few empirical studies. There were even fewer studies which were connecting the spirituality at workplace and distinguishing it from the religion and seeing its impact on organizationally relevant outcomes. So that was a space where we started our work. So first research, this was the thesis work. First was basically conceptual work, philosophical work, looking at organizations as manifestation of collective consciousness. Collective consciousness word is oxymoron, means consciousness in the Indian perspective includes the individual collective. In fact, there is no separation of individual and collective in the Indian perspective of consciousness. But I'm talking more in the conventional modern scientific term, collective consciousness, looking at organization as a collective consciousness and how that collective consciousness can live at different levels, market level, social level, or spiritual level. So that was a conceptual philosophical work. The empirical work, where there was really the need to do some substantial work, we looked at spirituality at workplace as a group level construct. And those who are familiar to psychometric process, psychometric skill development process, must be aware of the protocol required to be followed. You create the you generate the variables, make the operational definition, create the battery, uh, collect data, do the exploratory factor analysis to see which are the factors contributing to that construct, checking the construct validity, reliability, etc. So we carried out this process and developed a inventory of a spiritual climate of business organization. But I am in a business school, so just by uh, developing the inventory, just by developing a scale, how could we show its relevance and importance in the field of management? So we thought about few things which are likely to influence or likely to be influenced by spirituality at workplace. Spirituality at workplace in our inventory was defined as a workplace where people find their work meaningful, they have experience of meditative work, where work itself is experienced as a matter of joy, there is a hopefulness, sense of authenticity, and people work with the sense of community. So these are the 5 variables which constituted spiritual climate: meaningfulness of work, working for the world maintenance, which came from the two constructs, Swadharma and Lokasangra. So Swadharma means finding out your true calling, your aptitude and attitude, and Lokasangra is offering it for the service of the world. So we looked at these two constructs drawn from the Karma Yoga, added two more constructs, a sense of authenticity and a sense of community. Uh, Combining these 4 constructs, this spiritual climate inventory was created, and we looked at its impact on multiple organizational outcomes. So initially we thought customer service will be naturally influenced by the spiritual climate, because in the customer's interaction, some moment of truths are being created. And those moment of truth, how people are experiencing at work and how people are experiencing work gets reflected. And if organizations have that spiritual climate, it will get reflected in employees' service to the customer. So we looked at this study, we looked at this phenomena, studied the impact of spiritual climate of bank branches, and its impact on customers' experience. One bank and the chief manager, the leader of that bank, who was actually the transformational leader, Dr. Anil Khandelwal, helped me in getting the access and allowed this, and his team and his HR allowed this data collection. And we found that branches having high level of spiritual climate were delivering better customers experience, as it was reported by customers. That was the first study that was published in the Journal of Business Ethics. Then, as I said, we went on to look at the impact of spirituality at workplace on multiple outcomes. So the second study of looking at this spiritual climate at workplace was on learning, collective learning or team level learning. We also redefined, based on the, rather defined the definition of team level learning, drawn from the literature, and a survey of the literature and then some empirical work led us to the conclusion that learning in teams is reflected, or team level learning is reflected through two major variables: mutuality and collective reflection and experimentation. So questionnaire was created on these two variables, and we found that all the variables of spiritual climate, Swadharma, Lokasangra, sense of community, and authenticity, they positively influence both the variables of learning in teams. So this was the study carried out in 4 organizations of different kinds. One was the airlines, another one was a bank, another one was a software company. We saw that spiritual climate influences all these different types of organizations, all these teams which are engaged otherwise different kind of tasks, and that influences positively, that influences mutuality and collective reflection and experimentation in the in those teams, and as it is reported by these teams. So that was the second study. The third study about the spiritual climate was carried out with Professor Vishal Gupta from IIM Ahmedabad and my guide Professor Rajan Gupta. We looked at again multiple teams, and this time we were interested to look at innovative behavior, because only learning is not sufficient for a business organization. Learning must result into some outcome and something novel. And we found that innovative behavior in teams should be a natural outcome of the team learning. And then we saw whether that outcome is also influenced by the spiritual climate. And we found that answer was yes. Spiritual climate was influencing innovative behavior in teams. And this relationship was mediated by team learning. So these studies look at how the notion of Karma Yoga, and particularly the notions of Swadharma and Lokasangra, can be converted, can be used in the psychometric assessment, and it has how it influences different managerial related, different business relevant outcomes. Those outcomes, what we looked at was customer service, learning, and innovative behavior. I feel really great to see that our PhD scholar, Dr. Ajinkya Navare, who is now faculty member in IIM Jammu, and he is the chairman of a center called Anandam in IIM Jammu. He carried forward this work, and he not only looked at the outcome of the Karma Yoga, outcome of the Swadharma and Lokasangra at workplace in the form of positive psychological uh, dispositions like psychological capital, subjective vitality, etc. He actually developed the construct further. So he developed the whole construct of Karma Yoga, and not only looked at the manifestation of Karma Yoga, which is Swadharma and Lokasangra, but looked at the process as well. So process of the Swadharma and Lokasangra happens through equanimity, uh, uh, manonigraha, what he called the self-control, the manonigraha, falasha tyag, and samabuddhi. So these are the three psychological processes which go behind Swadharma and Lokasangra. Without these three psychological processes, falasha tyag, samabuddhi, and uh, uh, these falasha tyag, samabuddhi, and these things are necessary for person to experience Swadharma and Lokasangra. So this was again empirically validated, and he got many awards for his work in Indian Institute of Sciences, Doctoral Consortium, Indian Academy of Management, etc. In last few years, our team moved away from Karma Yoga based research to yoga based research. And we looked at how yoga practices can be the foundation to understand spirituality at workplace. To understand this process and influence of yoga at workplace, we need to understand first what teachers and parents wish for the youngsters. They wish for health, they wish for their joy, they wish the youngsters, their students or their kids should be morally upright, and of course they should have good career, they should demonstrate academic excellence. But what is the current situation? The current situation is that the millennials are most stressed out generation, and they are least likely to give healthcare an A grade, and that is likely to influence negatively in many ways. So the high stress, if continues, it results into chronic conditions like anxiety, insomnia, muscle pain, high blood pressure, weakened immune system, which may even lead to major illnesses such as heart disease, depression, obesity, etc. So that is the situation of about health. The situation about morality in management is that uh, 2008 was the watershed moment where we could see that business organizations are not the sites where people consider morality and ethics as the cornerstone of their decision making. There was a great revelation and recognition rather after this. Even after that major debacle of 2008, the moral integrity of the business leaders kept on coming to the question, coming to the matter of question. And apart from the high profile scam of and the incidences of the cheating, deception, organizational misconduct, unethical behavior, they are found to be increasing. That's not a very old study. 2015 study talks about that. And about joy, people are not very joyful at workplace. In fact, Gallup engagement survey suggests that only less than 20% people are fully engaged at workplace. In our own research, we have found that the 60% of the population is not flourishing. We carry out this all India level study to locate the youth of India on the scale of languishing, flourishing, and in between, moderately flourishing. What we found that 20% people are languishing, about 60% people are moderately flourishing, and only about 20% people are reported to be flourishing in this data. So suddenly we are not very joyful as generation, as society, and there is suddenly a great scope to increase our joy, because joy is the hallmark of creativity, innovation, helpfulness. That is a very important pursuit. So in order to address some of these questions, and we thought that yoga can be a wonderful intervention to enhance the joy and enhance the psychological health of the healthy young population. And uh, we wanted to know what is the mechanism and what extent this is possible. There were very few studies about the positive psychological impact of yoga. And most of the studies about yoga were done in the context of physiological impact. There is a large body of knowledge about the impact of yoga on the physiological aspects, but the psychological aspects, and particularly positive psychological aspects, there was not much research. Still, it is in a nascent stage. So our first task was to identify the pathways, how yoga makes us feel good. Because everybody, if you ask whosoever is practicing yoga, if you ask what is your experience, they say, I feel good and I feel a little more fresh. What is the meaning of that? So that those feelings have to be articulated in a more scientific way, so that we can do some measurement around that. So we looked at the literature and we found that two constructs seem to be capturing this experience of yoga. Two constructs are self-transcendence and subjective vitality. Self-transcendence is our ability to experience beyond our limited self. So our ability to identify with the existence, that can be of very high degree, that can be of the degree which is just understandable, which is just a matter of some experience, some epiphany of the individual. But that is also, we found, is good enough to create some positive impact. And subjective vitality is the sense of energy. What is the sense of energy on a day-to-day basis? So both of these constructs are already there in the literature. We have questionnaires to capture this construct, but these were not studied as the impact of yoga. We looked at the yoga literature, and we found that these two constructs can connect positive psychology, which is a body of knowledge in itself. Positive psychology got a big thrust 20 years ago when Martin Seligman became the president of American Psychological Association in 2001. American psychologist published a special issue on the positive psychology that was focused on the argument that psychology has influenced, or psychology has carried out, or the most of the attention of the psychology research has been on the ailments, on the human problems, issues, and we don't know much about the positive side of the human psyche, which is like courage or wisdom, or at resilience and optimism and these things. And not having disease is not equivalent to, may not be equivalent to health. Health can be defined, and mental health can be defined in its own terms. We need not to and should not define in terms of absence of disease. So that is the argument on which the whole body of positive psychology is built. From the positive psychology emerged positive organization behavior, and from the positive organization behavior and positive psychology emerged positive organization scholarship. Positive organization scholarship looks at the positive outcomes at individual, groups, teams, organizational, and societal level. So this is a big body, but there was no study connecting the yoga and positive psychological outcomes. And not that people were oblivious about it. Well, means there was some talk about this possibility, and that was mentioned as a reaction to 2001 special issue of American Psychologist by Walsh. So Walsh reacted to the this special issue in 2001 with the his observation that number one, this issue is primarily expression of the white male Caucasian perspective about positive psychology, and secondly, a lot of things which is being talked about in this special issue is already being talked about in the Western in the Eastern traditions, particularly Buddhism and Yoga, and he mentioned Buddha. But if you look at the total citation of the American psychologist, that particular article which talked about the positive psychology, which all said the Caucasian male Western perspective, has got like lakhs of citations. But Walsh's citation has probably not reached even hundreds when we looked at even in 2020. So we started this research in 2017, and we looked at these two constructs, self-transcendence and subjective vitality, can beautifully connect yoga and positive psychology. And in positive psychology, there's a very positive, it's a very popular construct, popular in the management literature, and that's why I'm talking about the spirituality at workplace, spirituality in management. Very popular positive psychological construct in management is psychological capital, where it is mentioned as PsyCap. PsyCap is a combination of four variables: hope, efficacy, optimism, and resilience. These four variables are found to be going together. We found that even 5-6 weeks of yoga practice, and this was so this model was empirically validated, and the impact of yoga was examined through almost a randomized control trial kind of experiment. Only difference was that the control group was aware of that in experiment group something was going on, but they were also receiving other inputs. So they were not blind totally, but but they were active control group, and we found that experiment demonstrated much bigger increase. So there was an increase in both the groups of psychological capital. We carried out this research in the IIT Bombay, and we found that both the groups increased, did better in the psychological capital, but the yoga consistently enhanced the impact of this model. So yoga consistently resulted into more increase in the psychological capital, and when psychological capital increases, something interesting happens which is of very high relevance to the field of management. People become more empathic, and people become more helpful to each other. We need empathic managers, the managers who have empathy towards the fellow beings, empathy towards this planet, empathy towards the natural environment, and that is found to be increasing even with the 6 weeks practice of yoga. That was one. That is one, and that is another entry point of the yoga and spirituality in management. The second thing we looked at, moral reasoning. Moral reasoning operates at 6 levels. There is a moral reasoning operates at 6 levels. First level is avoiding pain and pleasure, seeking pleasure, avoiding pain. Third and fourth levels are following the group norms and following the uh, law of the land. Fifth and sixth level are following the core values, truth, beauty, and goodness, and following universal perspective of action. That means thinking about what if everybody in this situation in the world start acting like the one I am working, I am acting. And that becomes the universal ethical criteria for any action. That's the sixth level of moral reasoning. Moral reasoning is assessed through multiple methods. Now, there are very good assessment tools to look at moral reasoning. Case-based assessments are there, questionnaire-based assessments are there. And we found that yoga-induced mindfulness within 6 weeks result into increasing moral reasoning. So the experiment group's score went up from 311 to 349 out of 600, whereas control group's score moved from 313 to 318. There was clearly increase because of the yoga on moral reasoning of the participants. And we looked at how it is happening, because in the science it is not sufficient to tell what is happening and what is increasing. You need to tell how it is happening. We need to trace the causal path as well. And we looked at the causal path and we found that it was happening by increasing the compassion and decreasing egocentric bias. So we become less egocentric, we become more compassionate, and that is the pathway through which moral reasoning increases. This is again a very important finding for the field of management, because management need people who are more open, who are compassionate, and who operate at high level of morality, because low level of morality, and particularly low level of morality of the higher level leaders, can be very detrimental to the organization as well as for the society. So this is the another study our team carried out, which uh, is very relevant for management and drawn from the yoga tradition, which is based on the yoga tradition. Third study is a bit more complicated. We looked at the engagement, multitasking, cognitive ability, and energy use. These are the 4 5 complicated variables. And this and what essentially we say, what we found. Uh, I can also tell you the genesis of this study. What we found in our school, and as I told you, I teach in the School of Management in IIT Bombay. What we found that students who uh, look very enthusiastic in the beginning of the semester, uh, they look very tired. They seems to be losing interest. They somehow want to complete the semester and wish to the next term or next semester. That energy dissipation was very evident uh, in my experience in last few years. And then we hypothesized that probably by uh, decreasing, by introducing the yoga based practices, we can prevent the dissipation of energy. And then we thought about what are the confounding variables in this. So cognitive ability of the person, that might be affecting this whole relationship of starting the semester high energy, end of the semester low energy situation, that might be affected by the cognitive ability. Why this happens? We talk to the students and realize that it is happening because they do a lot of multitasking. So they do a lot of work at the same time, and they need to take care of the placement, multiple assignments, their own certifications, uh, taking part in the corporate competition. All that goes on at the same time in a business school like ours, and that makes them end up doing a lot of multitasking, and that causes dissipation in the energy. What we found was interesting, that because we found that even if students having comparatively low cognitive ability, uh, they did better if they were doing the yoga based practices. And students with the higher cognitive ability, even if uh, they had the higher cognitive ability, they ended up doing little worse in terms of the energy and engagement in the course towards the end of the course. And we thought that, and we know that it is happening because of the multitasking. And why it was happening, we found that students who do yoga based practices are able to focus one task at a time. So they end up doing less multitasking, and in that process they were able to focus on one task, complete it, and then move on to the next task. And that is very much in line with what is advised in the field of management nowadays. Now people, there was a time when multitasking used to be considered as a very important quality of the managers, but now people know that multitasking doesn't result into productivity or higher productivity. Actually, the better strategy is to complete the task in hand and then move to the next task. And that's what the people who were doing yoga were practicing. So people who were practicing yoga ended up doing less multitasking, and as a result ended up dissipating less energy, and as a result became more engaged physically, emotionally, intellectually, even towards the end of the semester. So that has a very significant implication at workplace. If you want people to remain engaged, management need to consider the yoga based practices more seriously, because even if the people with the lesser cognitive abilities will be able to accomplish the task, and they will remain more engaged. Uh, so these are the findings I thought will be useful, will be of interest in this session, which are basically carried out keeping the management's point of view, but they integrate Karma Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga in the multiple studies. And these multiple studies clearly suggest that Karma Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga have very significant impact on the nature of management and in the outcome of the employees and many other things which are relevant for management. Um, Thanks to these findings, nowadays we are seeing many business schools are incorporating yoga-based practices in their curriculum. Our school introduced this yoga-based practices about 10 years ago. I had opportunity to design that course and run that course for so many years. Really thankful to the college, the institution management, my HOD, uh, uh, consistently, who allowed us to continue these practices. And now we see many schools have started incorporating these practices in their curriculum. And for example, there is a very famous Karma Yoga project started by Professor Venkat Krishnan in XLRI, and now it is going on. It's part of the curriculum in the Great Lake Institute in Chennai. Recently, IIM Ahmedabad, the course approval committee has cleared a course on mindfulness and yoga, where students will be taught about the mindfulness, its impact on the individual and organizational outcomes. Not only they will be taught, but they will be made to learn the practice of yoga. So these are the pedagogical initiatives which are now taken up by the institutions of the highest repute in the in the management academics, at least in India, uh, uh, which are talking about, now they are recognizing the importance of yoga in the field of management. If you wish to know more about these concepts, and if you wish to know as such more about the Indian cultural concepts, I invite you to visit this website. This website is the creation of one of the projects called Honeybee Project in IIT Bombay. This website is curates the articles related to the Indian culture and tradition in the form of wiki. So as you experience in wiki, there is a interaction, there is a dynamism, there is a democracy where people can contribute the content. All these features are incorporated in the Dharma wiki. Only difference in the Wikipedia and Dharma wiki is that Wikipedia claims that they are propagating neutral point of view, though we have concerns, though I have clearly reservations based on clear experiences. They do not promote a neutral point of view. There is some bias, and I'm not going to talk about that bias, but I have empirical evidences, and because of those evidences we had to start Dharma wiki. So in Dharma wiki we say that we do not promote a neutral point of view, we are promoting dharmic point of view. Dharmic point of view, not religious point of view, but dharmic point of view, with proper references, keeping the most important aim, that is Lokasangra, and vision, that is universe is the essence of Dharma. This universe is run based on Dharma. So Dharma is about the universal harmony. Based on these, that is the point of view based on which Dharma Wiki is prepared. So you can go to this site and take the benefit of the multiple articles on the in the readable form, in the form which is quick, which can give you the most important references very quickly. So you can visit that, and there you will get a lot of articles about spirituality and management, about positive psychology and spirituality, positive psychology in yoga. All these articles, all these studies which I've talked about are there, are being explained there. There is a recent book, there is a book which is coming, which is under publication, that will be launched soon. The cover page is there. That is about the indigenous Indian management. So we looked at the conceptualizations, multiple conceptualizations, which are drawn from the Indian traditional wisdom, and which are relevant for management. And so there are 16 chapters, and 7 chapters talk about the conceptualization and their relevance in management. And there are 7 chapters which talks about how these are being implemented in multiple organizations and what are the uniqueness about the Indian management. And whenever I say unique management, spirituality is inevitably part of that, inevitably very important aspect of that. So this is also going to be a resource book that can be one-stop reference for the people who wish to know more about spirituality at workplace from the Indian perspective, and also wish to carry out research in that direction. Uh, I express my gratitude again to the Vivekananda Kendra and Vivekananda Prabodhini for giving me opportunity to share these thoughts, to share these findings about spirituality at workplace, spirituality management. Thanks very much.